is a perfect unfolding, because part of the impulse to ask this question came from something a psychic said to me once. He said to me, "You're never going to be a great teacher because you don't have enough ego." And I want to be a great teacher, and so I've thought a lot about what he said and what I can understand about individuality and personal point of view and ego from his comments. And Abraham has often talked about the value of ego as point of focus and the leading edge of thought. And I would love for you to talk more about what's the point of individuality? Why are we unique? What are we here to express, and how does that relate to our ego?
Well, you are source energy that is joy-based and absolute freedom knowing. And you've come forth wanting to have exposure to things that light you up, to things that cause energy to be summoned through you. In other words, you came for the joy of the expression. And so the more you are focused and the better you feel, then the more fulfilling you are, the more you are fulfilling your reason for coming forth. Mm-hmm. But before we go there, and we will go there fully with you, I want to come back and address your initial question and comment from this psychic teacher that was talking to you, because we can feel something sort of stuck in there that we think is worth chewing on just a little bit. From time to time, Jerry will say about Abraham doesn't seem to want anything relative to their life experience. In other words, sometimes people, publishers or television programs or radio shows, different people who are wanting Jerry and Esther to participate with them on some level, will pose the question to them, well, what does Abraham think about it? What does Abraham want? And Jerry's response is, well, they don't seem to want anything. And we want to explain what he's feeling about that, because he can feel that Abraham comes forth in response to the things that you are asking. Jerry can feel that there is no non-physical assertion, that we are what we are, and that you have the power to summon that which we are, but you will summon by virtue of your questions. In other words, some think that a group of people could gather and that Abraham would just expound endlessly, that we are just dying, pretty funny, that we have already died, not even close, that we are wanting so much to express to you all that we've come to know so that you will then know it too. And that isn't how it works at all. It is that in your wanting to know, you extract from us that which we know about that which you are wanting to know, but there is no assertion, there is only law of attraction. And so we think that what this psychic was saying to you is that you formulate the question. Your life experience causes desire to be focused within you. And we think that he could feel you, and we can feel it too, not just with you, but with a lot of people. And it was that way with Esther in the beginning too. There is this feeling like, okay, I'm open, give me the secrets of the universe. Tell me what needs to be told. And there are many who are receiving that almost purport it that way. They will say, I am a vessel through which the wisdom of the world is flowing. And we say, it never happens that way, because unless there is asking, nothing is flowing. And he's just wanting you to sharpen what you want to know. Esther and Jerry were talking this morning about how after they had begun receiving Abraham, Esther made Jerry promise that he would never tell anyone. Mm-hmm. It was going to be their secret. Esther didn't want to appear weird. She didn't want to offend family and friends. She didn't want to purport herself in a way that was uncomfortable to others. In other words, Esther can hardly stand it if she holds someone up in traffic. If someone honks their horn at her, she writes them an apology letter. In other words, Esther is not wanting to make any waves for anyone, you see. And so the idea of expressing something as bold as all of this, she was not about to do it in any sort of a public way. And then someone gave them a flyer, and there was Shirley MacLaine was doing several seminars around the country that year. And Jerry said, well, let's ask Abraham. And so they said, Abraham, what do you think? And we said, we think you would enjoy it. We think it would be something that would be stimulating for you. And so they went to the seminar, and as they were sitting in the seminar, they were wondering why they were there, because the answers were not as profound as what they were accustomed to, and the experience was not as gratifying as their own personal experience, and they weren't sure what it was all about. But as Esther was there, she she developed a keen sense or realization that there were so many people who were wanting to know. She felt that begin to formulate within herself. She could feel they wanted to know. And she said to Jerry as they were driving home, I wouldn't mind being a vortex through which those answers could flow. In other words, it was a very big step for her, because Esther did not have that much that she was wondering about, but she was willing to be a vortex through which those answers could flow. Well, now your psychic friend was not talking to Esther. Your psychic friend was talking to you in response to the specific questions that you are asking, because Esther understands, and we think you do too. We think you understand something that your psychic friend may not really be understanding, and that is, when you are in this receiving mode, you are in the mode of allowing. In other words, you can't do step 1 and step 3 at the same time. You understand that step 1 is the asking, and step 2 is source will answer, and step 3 is you've got to be in the allowing mode. You've got to be in the receiving mode. And it is not a possible thing for you to be in the asking mode and the receiving mode at the same time. They are different modes, you see. And so you've been practicing the receiving mode. You've been practicing aligning your vibration. You've been practicing getting ready to be in the place that you can receive. And your psychic friend is saying to you, but if you're not clear about what you are wanting, then what you're receiving doesn't have much teeth. And so you get a sense of it. In other words, what we encourage everyone to do is to ask your questions and let life experience help you pose the questions, and understand that life experience is causing you to do the asking. And then the more you can do to get into the receiving mode, then the more you will be the receiver of what you're asking for. So we think you're asking an even bigger question than you realize that you're asking here. At least we're going to pose the question that we want to answer. Cool. Because we have been wanting to find ways to explain. In other words, you've been listening to us. Some of you think that Abraham is a sort of schizophrenic, because on one day we say you are the creator of your own reality. We say you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. We say set goals, think about what you want, talk about what you want and why you want it. Sometimes we even tell you to get specific about it and find the feeling place of it. Tear pictures out of magazines. In other words, make it feel as real. Get a creation box. Put things in the box and say that which is in this box is becoming. In other words, make your list of intentions, set your intentions, be as specific as you can, do focus wheels. And then we say, pet your cat, put your feet in the bay, get into the allowing mode. And today we're saying, get mad if it feels good to get mad. And we understand that as you're listening from different vantage points, you're saying, how do I find my place in all of this? And we say, can you see that you are different people at different times? You are standing in different situations at different times. Sometimes you're in the asking mode, but you're not in the allowing mode, and you want to emphasize allowing. Sometimes you're in the state of allowing, but you don't have much focus about what you want, and so it's time to stimulate your idea of asking. Sometimes sharpening your desire is what is best for an improved feeling. Sometimes diffusing your desire is what is best for the diffused feeling. In other words, it's sort of like saying, well, should I go fast or should I go slow? And we say, well, go fast on a wide open road and go slow when you're moving through trees. In other words, there's no right or wrong in this. Follow the gut feeling, and you always know what's the best thing to do. And so through the time that you've been hearing us, we've been talking a great deal about a lot of different processes. And every process is offered with the intent of helping you to focus your desire and soften your resistance at the same time, you see. And so we think that's what your psychic friend is saying to you. Be clear about what you want, but don't beat the drum of what you want when you're aware that you don't have it so much that you feel defeated. In other words, give yourself a break. And so today, you're hearing the leading edge, most advanced state of what creating your own reality is about. It's about acknowledging where I am and being all right with whatever it is, and no longer beating up on myself for the absence of something wanted or for the presence of something not wanted. And at the same time, be as clear as I can be about what I want, and maintain the best possible feeling in the process of moving from where I am to where I want to be. And today we would like to add that we think that if I'm here and my goal is here, that's a much healthier state of being than if I'm here and my goal is here. Can you feel how, if I'm here and my goal is here, in just a little, I'm here and I move to here, That was pretty easy. And now I'm here, and I moved to here. That was pretty easy. Now I'm here, and I moved to here. That was pretty easy. And I'm here, and now I moved to here, and that was pretty easy. And sometimes your psychic friend, who has received glimpses of some of the things that you really want, wants you to focus here when you're here. And you can't do that, you see. Yes.
What is a great teacher?
A great teacher is a fabulous student. A great teacher is someone who understands where you are and understands where you want to go and helps you to build easy bridges to get there. A great teacher is always looking toward where he knows you want to go and never looking back at where you have been. A great teacher never asks you to justify why you are where you are, but instead looks optimistically with you toward where you are going. A great teacher loves where he is, but doesn't demand that you be in the same place. A great teacher honors where you are and encourages movement from where you are to where you want to be, and leaves where he is and where he wants to be out of your equation. A great teacher will hide under the bed when it's appropriate. Or put on your car. Something more?
You've said that the ultimate trophy is joy, and that joy is a sign of connection to Source. And before today, usually would talk about following your bliss. But if bliss is the sign of connection to Source, it's the guidance that takes you there, then following your bliss just means following your guidance, doesn't it?
It does. And today you're hearing us soothing that a little bit by saying, follow the path of relief. Follow the path of least resistance. Follow the path of most allowance. In other words, follow the feeling of well-being. But you can feel that if you're reaching for relief and acknowledging that you found it, then you'll recognize the next relief. And eventually you'll find that place of bliss. But sometimes if you're reaching for bliss when you're very far from it, you lose your way. And so we would like to soften that by instead of saying follow your bliss, we would like to say follow what feels best to you. Follow the feeling that you have available. Reach for the relief is really even a better way of saying it, because if I relieve myself of the pressure of a stronger negative emotion, I will be in the softer energy of a less resistant emotion. Yes.
If the joy becomes the goal rather than the outside experience that you think that would be joy, what does the path look like? It feels like it's a lot more fluid.
You see, you're asking wonderful questions here, because when you're saying joy is the optimum experience, we want to say that in a different way now. We want to say to the depressed person, anger is the optimum experience. You get that? Because when you say joy is the optimum experience, he says, yeah, and as soon as I kill you, I'll reach for it. But so the optimum experience, in other words, that's why we're saying don't reach for the best of the best of the best. Don't reach for the best that anybody has ever felt. Don't even reach for the best that you've ever felt. Just reach for the best that you can find right now, and the best might be angry. But when you find angry and you say, I have achieved my goal, I set out deliberately to feel relief, and I feel relief, now you're empowered. Where if you find yourself in anger and joy is your goal, you're still defeated. And that's the difference in what we're saying to you here today. You can feel the difference, can't you? Yeah. And so just don't get stuck. Just keep moving. And don't let anybody else try to guide you, because they don't know.
So is that the value of ego? It's the place where the guidance resides.
We would define ego as the conscious thinking mind that is making the decisions. In other words, there is such power in a decision. And so here you are, extensions of source energy. And we don't really like the word ego very much, because it means something different to almost everyone who speaks it. But generally speaking, from what we feel you mean when you talk about ego, when we use the word back to you, what we mean is it's the conscious personality who gets to decide what I now want. But it's also the part of you that decides where I am in relationship to what I want. And so there's the egotistical me that wants this success, and there's the egotistical me that is acknowledging where I am the ego of you beats up on you a great deal. In other words, that's why people try to be egoless. That's why there are so many teachers that say, don't focus on your desire. It's because they've noticed that when you beat the drum of a desire, when you're over here, it does make you sick. In other words, it makes you feel bad. And so we're just trying to help you to bridge easily.